what's the impact of all this? All this data and analytics as you step out your kind of day-to-day jobs and look at the impact of society and the environment and the world at large. What's kind of the impact here to society and what you do?
Great question. I think that an example might make it better. If I am someone who is very much into thrillers, watching thrillers and maybe drama next, when I open Netflix, I get a recommendation that I end up liking and watching most of the time. There was a time when you would go to a site and you would be served with all these movies that you do not really care much about. Let's say I don't really care much about sci-fi movies or maybe horror movies with a lot of gory details, right? I don't care about those. I don't want to be served those movies as recommendations or suggestions. So what Netflix does is actually creates an engine which is a recommendation engine used based on a methodology called collaborative filtering process, which will take your likes and dislikes, and based on that it will build a machine learning model to know what would be the best experience for you. Similarly, if you go to Amazon.com, you see products that will be more relevant to you every time you go back to the site and make a purchase, because it's learning from your style on what you would like. So the impact, to your point, is that when we do this right, we create better, relevant, meaningful experiences for the consumers at large.
Yeah. Okay, and so there's a kind of contrarian view to this as well, which is, now you're saying you've got all this data and you can now personalize it and improve my sort of viewing habits effectively in what I'm doing. But, there's an ownership and control of this. And how does the role and the influence of this data with multinational organizations and even nation states, what's the kind of counter side to this in terms of, the information you have around individuals and the viewing behaviors in that example?
Yeah, so that also reminds me of another, I'm a movie buff, you could tell, another movie called Eagle Eye, which was actually a Spielberg idea that was eventually filmed back in the early 2000s, and Shia LaBeouf was there, and there is so much data about him in the system that the system can predict his next move and can take over and control.
Right.
Now, that is again an existential fear for the humankind, thinking that will robots take over one day. And that's where ethics comes in. That's where all this debate comes in. The way I am studying it is that this is far away, this is far from actually happening, so from a time frame perspective, I don't think we will be able to see that level of control in our lifetimes. However, having said that, is it possible? Absolutely. What checks and balances must be put together to make sure that we protect ourselves against that? And that is perhaps where this identity issue is coming in, being in the grid or outside the grid, the whole matrix ecosystem, if you will. Right. The other thing is that policies that protect humans can be translated as constraints into a linear programming or nonlinear programming equation if we are solving it. There are hard constraints, there are soft constraints. We do not violate the hard constraints. And if we do violate the soft constraints, we add a penalty to the objective function. So based on those kinds of algorithms, it is possible for us to put together an experience that will not create this kind of an ethical crisis in the future, with leaks in data systems that are happening, with hackings going on. A lot of those issues have come about, and there are better and known data governance processes that are being put in place. I think we are going through a phase of learning. And with the access of huge, troves of big data, obviously our learning is getting better every day. And I think that over the next 10 years or so, we will be at a place where we should be able to say what we have been able to control and what we have let out of control that needs to be controlled. The time is not there yet to be able to, to say that with perfect, confidence, because it's still evolving as we speak. But I see that, we should be, if we're on the right track, we should be able to see some good results and some not so good results as exceptions that we have to learn from, and then do the continuous improvement process of defining, measuring, analyzing, improving, and controlling. The DMAIC methodology that runs, the Six Sigma has shown us from manufacturing how accurately this process could protect us. So having that definition of the problem and then measuring it and then analyzing it and then improving it and then controlling is a cycle that will, it's a virtuous cycle that will keep going to, help us going towards the right objectives over time.
It's a journey in terms of ethical guardrails, as I'd call them.
Correct.
Around AI
Correct.
models and protecting that, go back to the original point around sovereignty of the individual. And right. Just from an individual perspective, the consumer perspective, how do you see kind of that ethical side of me having control? How do I have control on what data you're able to know about me? How do you see that?
So one thing is that, that's a great question too. Every time you go to a website nowadays, you will see, messages popping up on accept the cookies or not. Obviously, in most cases, I can control that and I say no. So that may be my way of controlling what data am I sharing. In many cases, if you're filling out, a web report or a form where you're putting your name and address and phone number, etc., knowing what you're doing and then looking at the agreement where they're saying, I accept that this data will be shared, unchecking it is a trained, process that we could actually make sure that we start from schools. We say, here is where you are giving permission explicitly to collect your data and do something with it. And here is where you have the choice of not signing up for it. Now, kids these days, they will sign up for something if they know that they're getting something back in return. They'll say, okay, use my data. And, more conservative senior folks will probably be worried about that. But the training in that case is that look for that acceptance cookie, look for that, that place where you say, I agree, and uncheck it if you must. And, that way you are not volunteering your information without knowing that you're volunteering. So that kind of control is available. Plus, there could be some sites that allow us credit reports, for example, that we look at, right? We should be able to make sure that we control that. People should have a habit of looking at those and making sure that there is no bad data in there. So I think a lot of this starts with educating communities, whether it's school, whether it is, college, whether it is a consumer training forum or other blogs and social media, blasting out these kinds of messages to help people protect their identity and to be able to control the data that they need, that they're sharing, is going to be a critical step for all of us.
So it's kind of ownership of knowing what you're sharing on the individual consumer basis is that balance we need to have between allowing data access, but also taking accountability yourself for what you're sharing and be knowledgeable as we go forward. As you present at the Global Data Exchange event on the 30th of January in Beverly Hills, what are you most looking forward to?
I am definitely looking forward to meeting people and learning from them what their key challenges are. I'm essentially a problem solver at heart, and learning from a diverse group of people. Diversity here means across industries, across companies, across functions, on what challenges they are seeing in their data ecosystem. We will have to, collect that in a way. Now, it will be in that conference. It could be, attending some of those sessions and listening to them. It could be meeting them in informal occasions or in the hallway or, after a presentation is over, or also on forums that are going to be probably our breakaway sessions where we specifically look forward to learning from people what data challenges that they have. My personal passion is more towards the analytics side of the equation, although the three legs of the stool of a CDAO is, of course, governance, data, commerce, and then also the data analytics part. I personally care more about the analytics part because we're lucky to have the data governance and the data commercialization is not our business, and data governance is something that we are lucky to have good checks and balances already with. So anything on analytics, problem solving with data that comes from the ecosystem is what I'm looking forward to learning from everyone, and probably even jump in and roll up our sleeves and do a little bit of work together.
Okay, great. That sounds a fantastic event to be. And I realize it's part of Grammy weekend as well. And what's your favorite genre of music and musician?
Indian classical music is what I really, really am passionate about. And I know that some Indian classical musicians have actually won, Grammy Awards, including the famous Ravi Shankar, who's no longer with us anymore. But that genre fascinates me. I also see the combination of genres coming in from, people like A.R. Rahman, who also won a Grammy, using Indian classical music and Western music and fusion, together, and then using it for, film background scores and all that. So very much fascinated with that, as well as I'm also fascinated with classic rock, but it's classic. So I look forward to looking at what new forms of music are developing today, both from the classic side and from the contemporary side.
And just thinking about that theme around Grammys, do you think that we should have a Grammy for data?
That's an interesting question. So Grammy for data, I think that in the world of analytics and data, unleashing opportunities for the whole universe as we speak, with leapfrogging happening even in countries that have been out of the grid before. I think that there could be an opportunity to recognize people who are bringing value from both, to your point, the ethical side, the data governance side, who are bringing value from analytics insights that makes experience, a lot better for people. So yeah, certainly we should definitely think about it.
And I'm hearing this term around, data sonification. Have you ever heard that term?
Yeah, so we are actually an advertising agency, so we do have a sonification. So when you open Netflix, you'll hear this, ding dong kind of a message that actually, tells people that it's Netflix that's actually launching. So I think that, that from that angle, there is a great opportunity for creating signals that will convey only one meaning to all consumers.
Well, Daz, it's been fascinating listening to you and going through your journey here and sharing your experiences. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please visit CDAO Magazine for any additional interviews. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to meeting you in person in the exchange.